Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar this September 2023. Wow, has it been an interesting summer, I dare say. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, go over some of the information that we have in details right now for the summer monsoon, where we stand with our water year, and then we have a great guest speaker to talk to us about the Verde River. So the usual situation that we do here with our webinar, I'll talk for a little bit, maybe 10 minutes. Our speaker will have time to talk for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. And then at the end, if you have any questions, throw those in chat and we're happy to answer those questions as we have time. So we're really grateful to have you here. Thanks for coming. And we're going to go ahead and get started. I did want to start with this, however, the fact that we do think a lot about what's been going on with this monsoon season and comparing it to that 2020 monsoon season, as we all talk about. And fortunately, this monsoon season is not, it's dry, but it's not the driest. So the 2020 monsoon season remains the biggest precipitation loser to date. We'll take a look. You're looking at two maps, one that says to the current time, 2020, June 15th to September 19th, 2020, and then the same time present, June 15th to September 19th, 2023, to kind of compare what we're seeing. So it actually hasn't been bad in a lot of locations around the state. If we go back and we look at what June experienced, we know June, if we remember, it's hard to remember since we dealt with such a hot July, but June was really cold. It was colder than normal. And so looking at the precipitation that we received in June, it was actually fairly dry. You can see the locations in the southern tier, the counties experiencing record dry conditions. So June was cooler, but it was very, very dry. We all remember July. That's hard to forget. It was exceedingly hot. It set records. It was the hottest July for the state, for various different cities and our counties. And you can see the lack of precipitation because we just really hadn't started that monsoon season. So our thunderstorms were delayed. They started picking up in August, which is great, but by then we were already 6 weeks behind what we needed to be for our precipitation. August, you can see the locations that were impacted by the remnants of Hillary. So you can see on the west side, we've got Yuma, La Paz, Mojave County doing well, a little bit of Coconino County, and of course, then we've got Apache and Navajo County doing good for August. Where do we stand for September? Well, September actually seems about average. So we're using that term average to mean what should we normally be receiving in September with our temperature and precipitation. And it's not so bad. So it feels outside. If you're in the metropolitan area here in Phoenix, it kind of feels very September-y to you. It does to me. And when we're looking at our precipitation, we're still getting action across the state in September. So you can see that some locations are actually above September precipitation, which is going to help us out when we go through the end of our water year and we look at what's going on overall with our monsoon season. So not so bad in September. But then if we back up and look at June through August, we know we're dealing with really hot conditions. We're dealing with really dry conditions. So June through August, that'll be the 10th hottest June through August on record. June through August is, or excuse me, the 20th warmest June through August on record, the 10th driest June through August on record. Those will abate a little bit, but it's still going to be record setting. We're still going to be in those top levels once we add September into that. So it's still very hot and very dry. We're looking at that activity across the state. Where did we get the thunderstorms? Really, Coconino County was the winner with our activity. So looking at lightning activity, Coconino County was that winner. Pima County came in second when we're looking at the lightning strikes, but very, very below average activity across the entire state. If we're looking at precipitation for our monsoon precipitation, so remember our monsoon We start counting at June 15th. It goes all the way till the end of September. So that's what you're looking at here with our monsoon precipitation at the various different cities around the state. You can see Tucson kind of about average for what they are expecting at this time. Flagstaff below average. We know that Phoenix has been well below average. There have been some locations that have been above average. If we look at the monsoon precipitation winners, we know that Yuma County, Mojave County, and Coconino County doing great. You can see that Tacna is doing great. Yuma has done great, and really that's assisted by that remnants of Hillary coming on in. So doing really, really good. Kingman's been doing good. Winslow's been doing good. If we look at Maricopa County and we zoom into what we've seen with our uh, Maricopa County Flood Control District alert stations, and if we just look at and compare what's been going on for the past 16 years, where does 2023 stand? Well, pretty dry all across the metropolitan area. So unfortunately, still well below average. We know that we're dealing with really low conditions at the Sky Harbor Phoenix weather station. Other locations like Apache Junction is doing better, but overall we're well below average, and unfortunately really down there at the bottom. Fortunately, though, you can still see the 2020 monsoon haven't hit that. So above that, that's a good thing. If we're looking at our short-term drought, we're seeing expansion of our short-term drought as a consequence of having that lack of precipitation, really that lack of precipitation in the southeast portion of the state predominantly. So Cochise County, you can see a little bit of Pima County, you can see Santa Cruz County, we've got a little bit of Graham and Greenlee County, starting to now move into that extreme, that red color short-term drought. There are impacts happening to the stock ponds. There are impacts that are happening to the vegetation in that area, and that's the consequence that we're seeing. We can see here in Maricopa County, Gila County still being impacted by that short-term drought. If we look at what it was a year ago, we were coming out of a dry winter, moving into a wet monsoon in 2022. So we did have some impacts of short-term drought a year ago. It wasn't to the same level. We were able to pull out of that short-term drought with our wet winter this past winter, but still, this has been an exceptionally dry monsoon. We're looking at our long-term drought, recognizing that we've been in long-term drought since 1994. If we go back and we look at the average precipitation for our statewide precipitation, that annual statewide precipitation. So we get that one number to represent what's been going on across the state. And we look at this kind of with a calendar from January to December. We can look at it through the water year, which goes October through September. The long-term average, if we go back to 1895, on average, the state gets a little bit more than 12 inches a year. That's that long-term average. Unfortunately, since 1994, if we look at that average in the last 30 years, it's been about an inch less, so just a little bit more than 11 inches. So that's something to consider when we look at this long-term drought. We take into account 24, 36, 48 month values, crunch all that together to look at what's been going on across the state, not just lack of precipitation, but also how hot those temperatures might happen to be make the atmosphere thirsty. And that's what we're still seeing. We're seeing that growth of that long-term drought. You can see really there in Maricopa County starting to expand. When we're looking at our water year, so the water year ends at the end of September, we start to take into account what's been going on with our precipitation. Obviously, that wet winter has been amazing. So we're looking here at a map that shows from October through March, kind of as our winter precipitation, well above average, exceptional. Really happy to see that. And it was much colder than normal as well. So that helps with keeping that snow from melting too quickly, and it can actually then go into our water supply. Summer here, we're looking at that map in the center, kind of starting from April through about present time, and you can see it's been fairly dry, well below average. But if we look at that entire water year, so we go October through present time, it looks like our water year just may end about average. So that can be a good thing. We'll have to wait until the end of September. But when we're looking at October through August, how much precipitation have we received statewide? We're at 11.43 inches already. So October through August, that's already beating that 94 to 2020 long-term drought number that we have, that little bit less than 11.25 inches. So we're already beating that. That's a good thing. So we're hopeful that we just need a little bit more here in September to maybe get us to that 12.25 inches of long-term average precipitation for the state. We'll have to wait and see, though. We'll see in a little bit. If we're looking at the likelihood of what's going to happen in September, are we going to get more precipitation? Probably not. We'll start to dry out. You can see our 8 to 14 precipitation outlook near normal, so that it starts to dry out in September. But the temperatures are still going to be cooler, according to this 8 to 14 day outlook. So that'll be a good thing. That'll help keep that moisture in place in our soil moisture. We really need our soil moisture to be at a great level when we start to get our winter precipitation. So having it colder would be a great thing. Plus, it feels great going outside. What's going to happen in October? Are we going to get more precipitation? The long-term outlook, the monthly precipitation outlook, is showing there might be tropical activity that may impact Arizona. We'll have to wait and see on that. But, well, I guess not all bets are off yet. So that might be a good thing when we're looking at that. Of course, temperatures still looking to be above average in October. And then, of course, we have been watching El Nino build up, and you can see that it is still very active in the equatorial Pacific. The expectation is that it will remain active through our winter. So all the way into next February is the expectation. We know that El Nino statistically brings a wetter winter here in Arizona. We've had 9 El Nino winters in our period of long-term drought, that 94 to present time drought, and actually 7 of those El Nino events have been wetter than normal. So we're very hopeful statistically that that will play out and we'll have another wet winter. That would be great to have 2 wet winters right in a row. So on summary, we're looking at our monsoon. It's going to end up being hot and dry. September's helping it out a little bit. The counties to the west and to the north are the winners with our monsoon precipitation. And El Nino, we're looking to get maybe statistically more precipitation. So I hope all of that happens. I'm going to stop share now, and I'm going to introduce our guest speaker, who is, I'm grateful to have her come talk to us. I met her last year. Actually, I've been kind of working with Tracy for a while. She has some great story maps on her website that I have my students take a look at so they can understand what's happening with water in Arizona, especially the Verde River. Tracy Stevens is the program director of Friends at Verde River. She manages the watershed report card, really essential. Other important aspects, sustaining flows, restoring habitat programs. She received her BS and MS degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. It was in biology, fisheries, and natural resources management. Very appropriate. We're grateful to have her here come talk to us about what's going on with the Verde River. I'll pass it over to you, Tracy. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to present today and talk a little bit about our work on the Verde. I just wanted to make sure you're seeing the presentation view.
Everything looks great on my side. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Friends of the Verde is a small nonprofit based in Cottonwood, Arizona, and we're focused on conservation of the Verde River, where we're working collaboratively to sustain flows, restore habitat, and engage community members in stewardship opportunities. Why do we do this work? Because we can't imagine living in Arizona without the Verde River. We focus on, as I said, keeping water in the river through our Sustaining Flows program, healing the land through our restoration work, and also our communities through our stewardship program. One of the tools that we developed with our partners in the watershed, including the Nature Conservancy and the U.S. Forest Service, is the Verde Watershed Report Card. The report card assesses different indicators based on water, habitat, and community to assess the overall health of the watershed. This tool provides insight into where we should focus our efforts, and I'll talk a little bit about this later. I did want to give a quick overview of the Verde watershed, realizing that probably most of you are fairly familiar with this being in Arizona. The watershed includes 6 Indian tribes and nations, 13 cities. It expands over 4 counties and 4 national forests. There are also 2 wild and scenic rivers within the watershed. The highest point is Humphreys Peak, and the lowest point is the confluence with the Salt. The Verde also provides water to the Phoenix metro area, and over 3 million people depend on the Verde and Salt river systems. So the health of the Verde really directly impacts the Phoenix area as well, not just the upper part of the watershed. And as I mentioned, the Verde is also nationally significant. It has the only 2 federally recognized wild and scenic rivers in Arizona. The lower Verde River, shown in the darker blue outline towards the bottom of the map, and Fossil Creek, one of the tributaries to the lower Verde. This comprises 57.3 miles of the river and is really the highest level of protection a river can have. Some of the reasons that the Verde is listed as wild and scenic include the recreational opportunities such as hiking and boating, the wildlife and bird viewing, and then also the plants and the scenery and geologic values as well. However, the Verde is in trouble. As I mentioned with our watershed report card that was released in 2020, this tool allowed us to assess the watershed, and we scored an overall C+, so average, which leaves us lots of room for improvement. And areas with lower scores are shown here in red and orange, including upland condition for habitat, base flows for water quantity, and water quality certainty in the water quality area. So we've focused our efforts there, and I'll talk more about those in a couple minutes too. But I'm going to start specifically to talk about the concerns we have with base flow and water quantity. So the Verde River flow is declining. Given what we just heard and saw over the last 30 years with our long-term drought, it's not surprising. And the U.S. Geological Survey gauges on the Verde back up that flow decline. What we've seen since 1990 is that in the upper watershed, shown here, we've seen a decline of 34% in flows in June, and a decline in 41% in the lower Verde Valley for flows in June. This is all in cubic feet per second, but this shows that we really do need to be focusing our efforts on keeping water in the river. And there are a lot of things we can do to help save this river. So what are some things that we can do as individuals and then also through our organization? One of our new programs is called River Friendly Living. And we're working to certify homes, businesses, and communities to adopt river-friendly practices. We're also working on stormwater management to capture more rain and restore our aquifers. Our River-Friendly Living program works to inspire voluntary conservation. So by informing people of some options and opportunities there are to improve their daily activities, we hope that they'll help us implement practices in their homes and businesses to improve river conditions and restore our aquifers. So through sustainable water supply, clean water, healthy habitat, and support for river conservation, those are the main pillars of the River Friendly program. So some of the basic things that people can do that you hear about often are to save water include don't run your faucet while you're brushing your teeth, install energy efficient appliances and low flow faucets. We've also worked to install large stormwater projects to harvest the rain. This is an example in Camp Verde. The parking lot shown on the upper right photo used to just drain down the street. It would flood houses as it went down the street and cause a lot of damage within the community. So we were able to install a stormwater capture system and also a rainwater harvesting system on the roof of this business. This helps to capture and infiltrate the water instead of having it just rush down through people's houses. This also helps drop out sediment and keep the water cleaner as we go into the river system. We've also worked with homeowners to install rainwater catchment on a small scale and install things like small berms on their property to slow the water down and help infiltrate it. This again helps improve our stormwater management and help the river stay cleaner. It allows that sediment to drop out, really capturing any harmful chemicals that come through stormwater, and hopefully that water is infiltrating into the ground as well. By capturing water off the roof, it's a similar idea. We have less stormwater to manage, and it helps you lower your water costs and irrigate your property. We're also working to make room for our native plants. One of the programs that Friends works with a lot of partners on through our efforts with the Verde Watershed Restoration Coalition includes riparian and invasive plant management, working to remove things like tamarisk, Russian olive, tree of heaven, and giant reed or arundo, the one that looks a lot like bamboo. These non-native plants crowd out our native species. The Verde is home to one of the few remaining Fremont cottonwood, Gooding's willow, riparian gallery forests, one of the most threatened forests in the country. So our work here really helps to provide to help those species regain their footing, and so we don't lose them, because they provide great habitat for our native birds and wildlife. An example of one of our projects in Camp Verde, you can see the large tamarisk stand here that was removed. This also helps to save quite a bit of water, as these non-native plants do tend to use quite a bit more water and be more prone to fire. So just showing a progression of that work, it definitely provides a benefit to our wildlife within the watershed. Another way that we're working to benefit wildlife includes work on habitat connectivity and corridors, primarily around pronghorn in the Clarkdale area. That's been our focus so far. By modifying fences up to a 19-inch height, pronghorn are able to go under. They don't jump. So it's also identified a lot of unnecessary fencing that volunteers have been able to remove. Over the last 2 years, they've removed over half a mile of fence and modified an additional mile, which doesn't sound like much, but in reality, this is really hard work, and it really benefits. Small improvements make a huge benefit on the landscape. As I mentioned, we do work on sediment and erosion control, upland restoration to heal these gully systems shown here. This is in an area near Perkinsville on the Prescott National Forest, one of our project sites. Over the last 3 years, we've worked to stabilize these gullies, and what that helps is it reduces the amount of sediment, again, going into the river system and the amount of pollution. It also allows water to drop out. So on the left side of the screen, this is one of our gully systems before implementing a project with simple rock structures. As the water comes moving from the upstream end of this gully through the downstream end, the water slows down behind these rock structures, drops out sediment, and infiltrates in. We've also put in these larger bowl structures to prevent the gully from expanding. This shows before implementation, after implementation, and then 1 year after implementation, and you can see how much more vegetation has grown up where that water is slowing down and dropping out sediment. It really helps green up this space and restore these areas. And we see grassland species starting to use them. This area is actually a pronghorn fawning area. And I've mentioned continuously keeping our rivers clean. We host trash cleanups as well. It's amazing what you can find when you're floating down the river or walking along. And we encourage people to do this as much as they can when they're out and about on the watershed, but we do hold larger events as well. We continue to work on improving our watershed report card scores and inspiring others to get outside. We work with some kids programs and community scientists throughout the watershed as well. We're working to develop a watershed-wide water quality monitoring plan. One of the areas that we found in the watershed report card is that we didn't have a lot of information. Overall, the water quality ranked high. We had a fairly good score, but we didn't have a lot of information to make that determination. So we're working with Arizona Department of Environmental Quality and other partners, and we've implemented a community science program called Verde Water Watchers, where we train community science to go out and monitor water quality. So far, we've established 13 sites and collected over 96 samples in the past 2 years of that program. Another community science effort is our BioBlitz, held every April. We work with fifth graders throughout the Verde Valley and also the community. Anyone is able to participate this using the free app iNaturalist. Some of our other volunteer opportunities include the Martin Luther King Day of Service. We hold a restoration volunteer event that day. And we also have an event in April, the Birding and Nature Festival, that allows people to learn more about the Verde River and enjoy a lot of the different bird species that migrate through during that time. And we're also working on a campaign for the Upper Verde Wild and Scenic River so that we could add to that Wild and Scenic River designation and continue to protect more of the Verde River. Thank you all so much for the time today. I really appreciate the opportunity, and if there's time, can try to answer any questions.
Oh, I'm so grateful, Tracy. Thank you very much for that informative talk. If anyone has any questions, you can throw them in the chat. But otherwise, we really appreciate your time coming to learn what's going on in the state, understand what's going on with the Verde River. Really appreciate that. So if we don't have any questions, I wish everyone a great day the rest of the week. And I think the state fair is opening up this weekend. So maybe I'll see you there and we can all have our corn dogs together. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a good day.